Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Literary Lore. Today we'll be stopping by to check in on the reclusive Emily Dickinson. While nearly none of her poems have titles, we usually name them after the first line. So today we'll be reading Because I Could Not Stop for Death. As usual, you'll find the poem in the description. With all that said, let's learn a bit about Emily Dickinson. Dickinson wrote 1,800 poems. Not 180, not 800, 1,800, yet she only published 10 of them and one letter. Her poems covered a wide range of topics, obviously with 1,800, but she had a particular fascination with death. Now, to help give you a better vision of this brilliant writer, I'll also add that despite being born into a particularly prominent family, she herself preferred the darkened walls of her own room. She had many friends that she preferred to correspond with through letters. Now, I don't know how Dickinson would feel if she were alive in the modern day. I'm certain she'd be the kind of person that would have everything delivered to her, and most likely try to work remotely. But would she be more or less social thanks to the internet? Either way, she did everything in her power to hide her poetry, not wanting to share her creations with the world. She was so private, in fact, the scholars dedicated time trying to figure out her romantic life from the fragments of her writings. The first theory is that she had a special connection with her sister-in-law. Other was Otis Phillips Lord, who was 28 years older than her, but she was already in her 40s, so it wasn't too strange. Neither are particularly certain, and the ambiguity of Dickinson adds to her mystique. But fortunately for us, her sister took her secret poems and instead of destroying them, like she requested, she published them, revealing the secret words of a 19th century emo. Without further ado, let's read a poem. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. So off rip, we see that she plays very loosely with structure. Dickinson was famous for employing slant rhymes and focusing more on the rhythm of things than a particular structure. This poem in particular sticks with 4 lines and alternates between 8 and 6 syllables. Because I could not stop for death, 8. She kindly stopped for me, 6. And it's like that the whole way through. But let's look at what she actually wrote. Death appears to her in a carriage. He doesn't show aggression or any kind of evil intent. He kindly stops for her, and she gets into the carriage with this gentleman. The bit with immortality being personified is interesting to me. It could be the idea that these entities are 2 sides of the spectrum of life, or it could be that she needed to make the rhyme happen. He slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. Death is patient. It's never in a hurry. It is inevitable. The speaker puts away the things she'd been working on, watches the scenes beyond the carriage as he takes her on this journey. Also, the ChatGPT looking dashes in the lines are used to create rhythm and emphasis. The pause is called a caesura, by the way. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun. So the carriage passes by children in school and crops that seem to stare at them. One could associate the children with early life and a field of grain as something waiting to be reaped. At last, they passed the setting sun, the end of a life, but it turns out they didn't pass the sun because, or rather he passed us, the dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet, only tulle. So the sun leaves them, leaving only the cold of death. Her gown and scarf are thin, providing no protection from death's cold touch. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Before I do my quick analysis of that one, I just want to point out she rhymed ground with ground. This is the reason she didn't want her stuff published. She didn't want people criticizing the rhymes that she chooses. They at last have reached a house, but it seems to be growing or bulging out of the earth. A home beneath the dirt. The roof itself is barely visible due to how deeply buried it is. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Here in the end, we discover that everything we've been told has been from essentially a ghost's perspective. The speaker has been dead for a long time and was simply recalling the day she died. Death had come for her and like a gentleman took her on one last jaunt to look at the land of the living one last time. Dickinson's relationship with death is evident here. It isn't something that she fears, she personifies it as polite and patient. It isn't until the end where it's the dark and cold part of being buried beneath the earth actually comes into play. But even then, it's as she reminisces and there's no indication of remorse about the situation. She was a solitary individual, enjoying the peace that brings. It would seem that she viewed death the same way. It was a simple shift from a good life to a peaceful rest, and the transition is the main part people have problems with. This poem presents that transition as smooth and pleasant as well. This poem could be Dickinson trying to reckon with the fear of the unknown. She has several poems where she writes about dying and the uncertainty attached to it. The poem could serve as an answer, a reassurance that it's going to be okay. Now, if anyone would like me to look at more of Dickinson's work, she's got plenty of interesting pieces. 1,800, there's got to be at least a few really good ones. But that said, we'll be returning February 6th with a love poem, if you can call it that. It's going to be interesting. Oh yeah, and Dickinson is a distant cousin of Taylor Swift, so that's fun. Maybe we do know how Dickinson would have been. Anyway, thank you for watching as always, and if you like the shorter form videos I'm trying to do, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know that's the format that it would be preferred as opposed to the longer form stuff like with Frankenstein. Either way, until next time, carpe diem.